It took Jasmine Crockett exactly 47 minutes to make a grown man cry on national television. Not that she was trying to make him cry, at least not at first. Congresswoman Crockett had walked into the House Judiciary Committee hearing room that Tuesday morning with a simple goal: ask questions, get answers, expose the truth. Standard oversight work, the kind of thing representatives do when they are not busy renaming post offices or arguing about whether pronouns are destroying America. But Eric Trump, second son of the former president, executive vice president of the Trump Organization, self-described business genius, and owner of a jawline that screamed, "I've never been told no in my entire life," had other plans. He strutted into that hearing room like he was walking into one of his father's golf clubs, all smirks and swagger, ready to treat congressional oversight like an inconvenient tea time. Big mistake. Before we get to the tears, and trust me, there were tears captured in glorious 4K by every camera in the room, let me ask you something. Have you ever watched someone lie so badly that even they forget which lie they are telling? You know that look? The eyes darting left and right, the mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock, the brain visibly short-circuiting behind increasingly desperate eyes. Drop a comment if you've seen that look before, and hit share because what happened next needs to be in the history books. The hearing was officially titled Oversight of Trump Organization Financial Practices and Potential Conflict of Interest. Boring name, explosive content. Crockett was one of 7 committee members, but from the moment she opened her mouth, everyone else might as well have been furniture. Eric sat at the witness table, flanked by 3 lawyers who were charging him roughly $2,000 per hour to look concerned and whisper urgently. He wore a Navy suit that probably cost more than a used car, a red tie that screamed, "I'm very serious about business," and an expression that said he'd rather be literally anywhere else. The chairman gavelled the hearing to order. Preliminary statements were made. Other representatives asked warm-up questions that Eric batted away with practiced corporate speak about robust compliance systems and industry-leading transparency. Then it was Crockett's turn. She adjusted her microphone with a kind of deliberate precision that made everyone in the room sit up a little straighter. Eric, still riding high on his earlier non-answers, actually smiled at her like she was a pleasant afternoon distraction. "Mr. Trump," Crockett began, her voice warm as Sunday morning honey, "thank you for being here today." Eric nodded magnanimously, happy to clear up any misconceptions about the Trump Organization's integrity. "Before you clear anything up," Crockett interrupted, the honey suddenly laced with something sharper, "let's establish what integrity means in your world. Do you know what perjury is?" The smile faltered. Just a flicker. "Of course I know." "Good, because you're under oath, and I have documents." She slid a stack of papers across the table. Not dramatically, not with flair, just a simple push, the way you'd slide a check across a diner counter. But Eric's smile didn't just falter this time. It evaporated. His eyes locked on those papers like they were a subpoena from hell. "These are property valuation documents for Mar-a-Lago," Crockett continued, pulling out a pair of reading glasses that somehow made her look even more dangerous. "For the years 2015 through 2020, tax documents show you valued the property at approximately $27 million. Very reasonable. Historic property, can't be developed, limited by preservation agreements. $27 million makes sense." Eric opened his mouth. Nothing came out. One of his lawyers leaned in, whispered something urgent. "But these documents," Crockett said, pulling out another page, "these are loan application from the same period. And they say Mar-a-Lago is worth $739 million, with an M. That's an interesting fluctuation, wouldn't you say?" "Property values fluctuate based on," Eric started, "based on whether you're talking to a bank or the IRS. Crockett's eyebrow arched. "Because that's what this looks like, Mr. Trump. It looks like you told the tax authorities your property was worth $27 million, so you'd pay less taxes. Then you turned around and told Deutsche Bank it was worth $739 million, so you could get bigger loans. That's not fluctuation. That's called fraud in 49 states. In Florida, we call it Tuesday." Laughter rippled through the gallery. Eric's face reddened. "You certify both valuations as accurate, Mr. Trump. Your signature is right here, and here." She tapped the documents. "So, which Eric Trump signed these?" the one who can't do math, or the one who commits fraud. The context of property valuation is complex, Eric tried, his voice climbing an octave. I'm sure it is, Crockett said. Let me simplify it for folks watching at home. If I told my bank my house in Texas is worth $700,000 so I could get a big loan, then I turned around and told the county assessor it's worth $27,000 so I'd pay less property tax, what happens to me? Eric stared at her. I'd go to jail, Mr. Trump. Regular people go to jail for that. It's called fraud. Bank fraud, tax fraud. Pick your flavor. But you got to run the company while your daddy ran for president. Got to play executive. Got to keep signing papers with wildly different numbers. Now, let me ask you directly, under oath on national television, which valuation was a lie? The $27 million or the $739 million? Eric's jaw worked. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. He looked at his lawyers. They looked at their legal pads. One of them wrote something down that probably said, "Store." Mr. Trump, you're under oath, Crockett reminded him, her voice gentle as a loaded gun. The property has multiple valuation methodologies depending on use case and market conditions at the time of assessment. That's not an answer. Which number is true? Both can be accurate depending on. So, I'm not asking about can be. I'm asking which one is. You signed these documents certifying their accuracy under penalty of law. So, either you lied to the bank, you lied to the IRS, or you lied to both. Which is it?
The silence in that room was thick enough to cut. Eric's face had gone from red to purple. Sweat beaded on his forehead. His lawyers were whispering so urgently they were practically hissing. I'll need to review the specific documentation before. You're looking at it right now, sir. The Trump Organization employs professional assessors. Who answered to you? You're the executive vice president. You signed off on these. So, I'll ask one more time, which number is the lie? Eric's hands gripped the edge of the table. His knuckles went white. I invoke my right to consult with counsel before answering questions of a legal nature. The gallery murmured. Reporters typed furiously. Crockett leaned back in her chair, a small smile playing at her lips. Interesting, she said. First question, and we're already at talk to my lawyer. This is going to be a long morning. She made a show of checking her notes, letting the moment breathe, letting America watch Eric Trump squirm under the weight of his own signatures. If you're thinking this man is cooked, wait until you see what she pulled out next. Crockett said, looking directly at the C-SPAN camera, comment receipts if you love watching privilege meet consequences. Crockett shuffled her papers, the sound crisp in the tense silence. When she looked up again, her expression had softened, almost gentle, almost kind. Let's talk about something nice, she said, her voice warm again. Charity. You ran the Eric Trump Foundation, correct? Eric's shoulders relaxed slightly. This was safer territory, good press, positive stories. He'd done interviews about this. Yes, we raised millions for St. Jude Children's Hospital. Oh, you raised millions, Crockett said, nodding. Impressive. Very generous. Let me show you where they went. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees.
She pulled out another document. These are financial records from your foundation, obtained through public disclosure requirements. In 2014, you hosted a charity golf tournament at Trump National Golf Club in Westchester. Beautiful course. I've seen pictures. The tournament raised approximately $1.2 million for children's cancer research. That's right, Eric said, chin lifting. One of our most successful. Your foundation paid the Trump Organization $322,000 to host that event. The chin lowered. Now, I'm no golf expert, Crockett continued, but that seems steep, especially since you own the course. Or rather, your family did. So essentially, your charity paid your family's business $322,000 to host a charity event. which means of the $1.2 million raised for children's cancer, $250,000 went straight back to Trump businesses. Operating costs are standard for charitable events, Eric started. Sure, they are, but most charities rent venues from third parties at fair market rates. You control both sides of the transaction, Mr. Trump. You decided what to charge yourself, and you charged a children's cancer charity $322,000 to use a golf course you already owned. Eric's lawyer whispered something. Eric nodded, grabbed his water glass with a shaking hand. And that's just one event, Crockett said, pulling out more papers. Over the course of 6 years, your foundation funneled approximately $2.2 million through Trump Organization properties, golf tournaments, galas, fundraising events, all hosted at Trump venues, all charging premium rates, all coming out of money donated for sick children. We provided world-class facilities. You charge sick kids rent, Mr. Trump. Crockett's voice was sharp as a scalpel. Now, St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, one of the most respected charities in America, has an overhead cost of 11%. You know what? Your foundation's overhead was 20%, nearly double. Where'd that extra 9% go? Let me guess, golf cart fees. Scattered laughter. Eric's face was scarlet again. But wait, Crockett said. It gets better. In 2011, your foundation paid a sculptor $100,000 for a 6-foot-tall portrait of your father. That portrait now hangs in one of your golf clubs. So, your children's cancer charity bought a giant painting of Donald Trump and put it in a Trump business. That was a fundraising item that didn't sell at auction. So, you bought it yourself with charity money for your own business. Crockett leaned forward. Mr. Trump, I want to make sure every American watching understands this. You ran a foundation that raised money for children dying of cancer. And you used that money to buy art of your father to put in your golf club after charging the charity rent to host events at your properties. Is that an accurate summary? It's more complicated than... Is it accurate? The foundation operated within legal guidelines. It was shut down, Mr. Trump, by the New York Attorney General for illegal activity. Your foundation was dissolved, and you were banned from running charities in New York State. Those aren't my opinions. Those are legal facts. Eric's jaw clenched. We cooperated fully with. You settled. You admitted wrongdoing. You paid fines. And you were prohibited from ever running another charity in New York because you couldn't be trusted not to steal from sick kids. Crockett paused, letting that sink in. You know what's wild? You could have just not done that. That was an option. You could have hosted the tournaments anywhere. Could have charged actual market rates. Could have not bought giant paintings of your daddy with cancer kids' money. But you chose to funnel charity funds into Trump properties. And then, here's my favorite part. You bragged about it. She pulled out a glossy magazine. Forbes. This is a 2014 profile where you talk about being a philanthropist. You told a reporter, and I quote, I love being able to give back. Give back what, Mr. Trump? The money you were skimming off the top. We raise awareness. You raise invoices. So. Crockett tossed a magazine onto the table. Your foundation operated for 6 years. It raised approximately $16 million. Beautiful. But after you paid your own businesses for facilities, after you bought paintings, after you covered your overhead, do you know how much actually made it to St. Jude's? Eric said nothing. About $8.3 million, roughly half. The other half went to Trump-affiliated expenses. So for every dollar donated to cure childhood cancer, 50 cents went to making you look charitable while enriching your family business. His hands were shaking now, actually visibly shaking. And then you have the audacity to sit here and talk about integrity, Crockett said, her voice dropping to something cold and quiet. Mr. Trump, I've met real philanthropists. People who give without taking, who write checks from their own accounts, who don't charge sick children rent. You're not a philanthropist. You're a con artist with a tux. Eric's mouth opened, closed. His lawyer put a restraining hand on his arm. The foundation was shut down due to technical violations. The lawyer tried. Counselor, your client is under oath. Not you, Crockett said. Mr. Trump, Yes or no? Did your foundation pay Trump businesses for services? Yes. Did you control both the foundation and have influence over the businesses? Yes. Did the New York Attorney General shut down your foundation for illegal activity? A long pause. Yes. Thank you for your honesty. Finally, Crockett made a note. Can I get a show of hands? Who's surprised? Nobody. Nobody in this room is surprised. The man who stole from kids is squirming under oath. Shocking. She looked at the camera again. Tag someone who needs to see what happens when receipts meet reality because we're just getting started. Eric looked like a boxer on the ropes waiting for the bell. But there was no bell, just Crockett flipping pages, preparing her next assault. Mr. Trump, she said, voice businesslike. Now, how would you describe your role in the Trump Organization? I'm Executive Vice President with oversight of development and acquisitions. You've described yourself as having decades of real estate experience, correct? I've seen interviews. Yes, I've worked in the industry since. How old are you? Eric blinked. I'm 40. So, you had decades of experience since, what, birth? Were you negotiating deals in your crib, reviewing contracts during potty training? Laughter erupted. Eric's jaw clenched. I've worked in the family business since college. Since your father put you on the board for tax purposes, Crockett corrected. Let's talk about Trump University. And there it was, the flinch, the microsecond of panic that crossed Eric's face before he could mask it. Trump University was a separate entity that. You sat on the board of that used your name, that you promoted in marketing materials. Crockett pulled out a brochure, glossy and gold. Look at this. Learn from Trump's handpicked instructors, including Eric Trump. Your name, your face, your implied endorsement. I provided strategic oversight. You never taught a single class, did you? The curriculum was developed by. That's not what I asked. Did you ever teach a class at Trump University? Yes or no? No. But did you ever attend a class? I reviewed materials. Did you ever step foot on a Trump University campus? Eric hesitated. The program was primarily. There was no campus, Crockett said flatly. It was hotel conference rooms. But you didn't visit those either, did you? You just lent your name. Let them put your face on the brochures. Let them tell working-class Americans that they'd learn real estate secrets from the Trump family. What secrets, Mr. Trump? How to inherit money. The program offered valuable networking and educational opportunities. It was a scam, a $35,000 scam. Let me tell you about Shea Simpson, single mother from Akron, Ohio. Worked as a medical secretary. She saw your brochure, saw your face, believed that the Trump family was going to teach her how to make money in real estate. She didn't have $35,000. So, you know what she did? She took out a loan, put herself in debt because your sales team, trained to use high-pressure tactics, told her this was her one chance to learn from the best. Crockett held up a 3-ring binder. This is what she got. Photocopied materials, generic real estate advice she could have gotten from any $20 book, and a certificate with your signature. Want to guess if that signature was real or printed? Eric said nothing. It was printed, Mr. Trump. You never signed a certificate, never met her, never taught her, never gave her anything but debt. She defaulted on that loan, ruined her credit. And for what? So you could make a quick buck off her name on a spreadsheet. The program had thousands of satisfied customers. It had a $25 million settlement. Crockett's voice cracked like a whip. Because it was fraud. Certified, adjudicated, settled fraud. You paid $25 million to make the lawsuits go away. Not because you were innocent. If you were innocent, you would have fought it. You paid because you were guilty and you knew it. That was a business decision to avoid protracted litigation. It was an admission. Sir, you defrauded students, took their money, gave them nothing, and when they sued, you paid them off. That's not how innocent people behave. Eric's breathing was shallow now. His lawyers were writing frantically. You sat on that board, Mr. Trump. Board minutes show you attended meetings, reviewed financials, knew the student complaints were piling up, knew the sales tactics were aggressive, knew the product was garbage, and you let it continue because it was profitable. I trusted the management team. You were the management team. You and your father and your sister. You three ran that scam. And when it collapsed, when the lawsuits came, when the attorneys general from multiple states came after you, you paid them off and walked away. But Shea Simpson? She's still paying off that loan. Crockett let that sit for a moment. Let America digest it. So, let me ask you again, what real estate secrets did you teach? What decades of experience did you share? Or were you just a name on a brochure, selling a scam to desperate people? Eric's voice was barely above a whisper. The program had satisfied customers. The program was shut down for fraud, Mr. Trump. You can keep lying, but the judge already called it a scam. You lost. The victims won, and everyone watching knows exactly what kind of businessman you are. She looked at the camera one more time. If this were a boxing match, they'd stop the fight. But we're just getting started. Hit that like button if you're here for all 10 rounds. Crockett was relentless. Eric's 3 lawyers looked like they wanted to call for a recess, but their client was too stubborn or too stupid to quit. Let's discuss your actual business acumen, Crockett said, voice almost cheerful now, like she was enjoying this. She probably was. You've been trusted with major Trump Organization projects, correct? Yes, I oversee multiple international developments. How's Trump Winery doing? The question landed like a slap. Eric blinked. We're expanding operations. Is it profitable? The wine industry has complex revenue cycles. That's not what I asked. Is Trump Winery profitable? Yes or no? We're reinvesting in infrastructure. So, no. It lost money 4 years straight according to your tax filings. But sure, let's call that reinvesting. Crockett flipped a page. How about Trump Ice? Eric's face went blank. That was discontinued. It was bottled water. You tried to sell bottled water in 2004 when every grocery store already sold bottled water for $1. You charged $5 a bottle and wondered why nobody bought it. The company lasted 3 years and lost. She checked her notes. Approximately $2 million. Who loses money selling water? Scattered laughter. Eric's jaw was clenched so tight it looked painful. Trump steaks, Crockett continued. Sold through sharper image. Failed in 2 months. Trump vodka. Failed. Trump magazine. Failed. Trump mortgage. Oh, this one's my favorite. You launched a mortgage company in 2007, right before the biggest housing collapse in modern history. That's not bad luck, Mr. Trump. That's apocalyptically bad judgment. Market conditions were unforeseen. Maybe. Everyone else saw it coming. The subprime crisis was on every front page. Economists were screaming warnings. But you launched a mortgage company, and it collapsed within a year. How much did that cost? Eric said nothing. Trump Soho, legal nightmare. Investors sued for fraud. Another settlement. Trump Toronto, foreclosed. Trump Panama, legal battle over unpaid fees. Your name ripped off the building. Literally, they took your name off because it was hurting property values. Some projects face challenges. All your projects face challenges, sir, because you're not good at this. Crockett leaned forward. Here's what kills me. You keep calling yourselves business geniuses. You, your father, your whole family, best negotiators, incredible businessmen. But every business you touch that isn't trading on your daddy's name, it fails. Not struggles, fails, collapses, bankrupts, gets sued, get your name literally torn off buildings. The Trump brand is internationally recognized as a warning label. You're not businessmen. You're a brand name with a pulse. And even that's debatable some days. The gallery was eating it up. Reporters weren't even trying to hide their grins. Let me paint a picture for America, Crockett said. Imagine you inherited a successful company from your father. All you had to do was not screw it up, just maintain it, maybe grow it carefully. Instead, you launched a vodka line nobody wanted, a steak company that sold through electronic stores, a mortgage company at the worst possible time, and a fake university that got shut down for fraud. And somehow you still think you're qualified to run anything more complicated than a lemonade stand. That's your cherry-picking failures. Cherry-picking, Mr. Trump? These are the only cherries. Show me your successes. Name one business venture you started from scratch that succeeded. Eric opened his mouth, closed it. His lawyers were urgently whispering. Trump golf courses, Eric finally said. Which ones? The ones hemorrhaging money, or the ones your father bought and slapped your name on? We've acquired and developed. With whose money? Your father's. Everything you've ever done was funded by Trump Organization Capital, which came from your father, who got a $400 million loan from his father. You're 3 generations deep in inheritance. You've never started anything from zero, never bootstrapped, never risked your own money because you've never had to. Crockett sat back, letting it breathe. You know what? I take it back. You're not businessmen. You're a trust fund kid playing dress-up in suits that cost more than most Americans make in a month. And the only reason you're not bankrupt is because real professionals, accountants, lawyers, managers, do the actual work while you take credit and cash checks. Eric's hands were trembling again. His face had gone from red to pale, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning. I've worked in this company my entire career. You've worked for your father your entire career, Crockett corrected. There's a difference. One requires merit. The other requires being born. And Mr. Trump, you were born. Congratulations. But that's not an accomplishment. That's luck. And even with all that luck, all that money, all those advantages, you still managed to lose money on water and steaks. She shook her head, almost pitying. Comment math, if you've ever been better at business than a self-proclaimed billionaire's son. I'll wait. The hearing was supposed to last 2 hours. They were 90 minutes in, and Eric Trump looked like he'd gone 12 rounds with Mike Tyson. But Crockett wasn't done. Not even close. Mr. Trump, she said, voice businesslike again. Have you ever invoked your Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination? Eric hesitated. His lawyers were shaking their heads urgently. Aye, that's in what context? In the context of the 500 times you did it during the New York Attorney General's investigation. The room went silent. Even the reporters stopped typing. I exercised my constitutional rights 500 times. Crockett held up a document. This is the deposition transcript. You were asked 500 questions. You pleaded the fifth 500 times. Not 10 times, not 50, 500 times. My attorneys advised. Your attorneys advised you that telling the truth would incriminate you. Let that sink in. Crockett looked at the camera. For everyone watching, when you plead the fifth, you're saying, I cannot answer that question because my answer might prove I committed a crime. It's a constitutional right. Absolutely. But you know who uses it 500 times in one deposition? People with a lot to hide. Eric's face was purple again. That's a mischaracterization. Is it? Let me read you some of the questions you refuse to answer. She flipped pages. Did you knowingly inflate asset values on loan applications? Fifth Amendment. Did you review financial statements before submission? Fifth Amendment. Were you aware of discrepancies in property valuations? Fifth Amendment. She looked up. You took the fifth on what is your position in the company? I was advised to invoke my rights broadly because your lawyer knew that even basic questions about your job could incriminate you. Crockett's voice rose. Mr. Trump, I want everyone watching to understand what happened. You sat in a legal proceeding under oath and you said, I cannot answer that because my answer might prove I committed crimes. 500 times. She stood up, pacing. Now, you know what I did during my entire legal career? I pleaded the fifth exactly 0 times because I didn't commit crimes. It's actually pretty easy to not commit crimes, Mr. Trump. You just don't commit crimes. Nervous laughter rippled through the gallery. But you? You took the fifth on basic questions about your job, about your father's businesses, about property valuations, about financial statements. You took the fifth so many times that the Attorney General's office had to break the deposition into multiple days because you were taking so long to say Fifth Amendment. I exercise my rights as someone who's guilty. Crockett wheeled on him. That's what the Fifth Amendment is for. It's not a get-out-of-question-free card. It's an admission that you have something to hide. And you hid 500 times. She walked back to her seat, shuffled papers. Here's another fun one, she said. Did you discuss property valuations with your father? Fifth Amendment. Did you sign financial documents? Fifth Amendment. Do you understand what fraud is? She paused. You actually took the fifth on whether you understand what fraud is. That question was designed to trap. It was designed to establish whether you know right from wrong. And you couldn't answer it without incriminating yourself. Eric's lawyers were having a frantic whispered conference. One of them passed him a note. Eric read it, crumpled it slightly. The Fifth Amendment protects guilty people, Crockett finished. It protects guilty people from having to admit they're guilty. And you use it 500 times. If I did that once in a hearing, I'd be headlines. You did it 500 times and went to Mar-a-Lago for Christmas. She sat down, steepled her fingers. Let me ask you something directly, and you're under oath here, not in a deposition where you can hide behind the fifth. Did you commit fraud? Eric's eyes went wide. Aye, that's a legal question that requires. It's a yes or no question. Did you knowingly inflate asset values to deceive lenders or tax authorities? Aye, my counsel advised. Your counsel isn't here to answer for you. You are. You're under oath. Did you commit fraud? The silence stretched. 10 seconds. 20. Eric's mouth opened and closed like a dying fish. I'm going to interpret your silence as an answer, Crockett said, because we both know what you'd say if you could say it without going to prison. She looked at the camera one last time for this round. They say the Fifth Amendment protects the innocent, but 500 times? Shay, this if you think something's rotten in Denmark, or in this case, Manhattan. There was a brief recess, 10 minutes where Eric could breathe, hydrate, have his lawyers tell him he was doing great. He wasn't. When they reconvened, he looked marginally more composed. That lasted about 30 seconds. Mr. Trump, Crockett began, let me ask you a philosophical question. Eric braced himself. If your last name wasn't Trump, if you were, say, Eric Johnson from Milwaukee, would you be executive vice president of a billion-dollar company? I've worked hard. That's not what I asked. Crockett's voice was patient, but firm. Hypothetically, if your name was Eric Johnson, if you grew up in a middle-class home, if you had to apply for jobs and interview like everyone else, would you have this position? Yes or no? Eric's mouth opened, closed. He looked at his lawyers. They looked at their hands. I've built a career based on being Donald Trump's son. Answer the question. Would Eric Johnson from Milwaukee be executive vice president of anything? That's impossible to answer. It's very possible, and we both know the answer. Let me walk you through your qualifications. Crockett pulled out what looked like a resume. Bachelor's degree in finance and management from Georgetown. Good school, respectable degree. Nothing special, but fine. No graduate degree, correct? I went straight into the family business. Right. No MBA, no law degree, no specialized certifications, no CPA license, no professional designations of any kind, just a bachelor's degree that half of Americans have. Eric's jaw clenched. Work experience outside the Trump organization, 0. You've never worked for any other company, never interviewed for a position, never had to prove yourself to an outside employer, never competed for a job. Your entire resume is work for dad. Is that fair? I've managed billion-dollar projects. Yeah, for your father, using his money, with his name, on his properties. Crockett ticked them off on her fingers. You've never raised capital from independent investors. Never pitched a bank that didn't already have relationships with Trump properties. Never managed a project where failure wouldn't be caught by the family safety net. I've proven myself through results. Have you? Crockett leaned forward. Because we just spent an hour listing your failures. Trump vodka, Trump steaks, Trump mortgage, Trump Soho, Trump University. These are results, Mr. Trump. Bad ones. And you still have your job. You know why. Eric said nothing. Because you can't be fired. Because this isn't a meritocracy. It's a family business. And in a family business, You don't need to be good. You just need to be born. She pulled out another document. This is a 2016 interview where you said, "Everything I've achieved, I've owned." Do you stand by that statement? Yes. You earned being born into a wealthy family. I earned my position through. You earned nothing. Crockett's voice was flat. You were born on third base and you think you hit a triple. You inherited connections, capital, properties, a brand name, and opportunities that 99.9% of Americans will never see. And you call that owning it. I could have squandered. You did squander it. We just reviewed the list. You lost money on water. Water, Mr. Trump, the thing that falls from the sky. You found a way to lose money selling it. Laughter erupted. Eric's face was scarlet. Millions of Americans work 2 jobs. Crockett said, voice rising. They go to night school, take out loans they'll spend decades repaying, claw their way up from poverty with nothing but determination and hope. They compete for every opportunity. They get rejected hundreds of times. They fail and get back up, with no safety net, no family business to fall back on, no trust fund to cushion the blow. She stood up, walked around the table. And then they watch people like you, who inherited everything, failed at most of it, cheated at the rest, and still landed on your feet because of your last name. They watch you call yourself self-made. Self-made? You're not self-made. You're data-made, inheritance-made, trust fund-made. Eric's breathing was rapid now, shallow. Let me tell you what earned looks like, Crockett said. Earned is growing up in a single-parent household. Earned is working through college. Earned is passing the bar exam after studying in a 1-bedroom apartment. Earned is winning an election because voters believed in you, not because you bought it. That's earned, Mr. Trump, not having everything handed to you and managing to not completely destroy it. I've worked my entire career for your father in a job you couldn't be fired from. That's not work. That's nepotism with a salary. She walked back to her seat, sat down heavily. Don't you want to know why this hearing is hard for you? Why you're sweating and stammering and pleading the fifth 500 times? Because for the first time in your privileged life, you're facing accountability from someone you can't sue, can't buy, can't have daddy deal with. Someone who doesn't care about your name or your buildings or your brand. Someone who only cares about the truth. Eric's eyes were glassy. His hands trembled on the table. And it's killing you, Crockett finished. Because you've never had to face consequences before, not real ones. You've settled lawsuits, paid fines, gotten pardons, and walked away. But hey, under oath on national television, you can't buy your way out. You can't sue me. You just have to sit there and take it. She looked at the camera. If you know someone who earned everything they have, tag them below. Let's celebrate real work, not inherited privilege. The chairman asked if Eric needed a recess. His lawyers were practically begging for one. But Eric, stubborn, ego-bruised, desperate to prove he could handle this, shook his head. I can handle this, he said, voice rough. Crockett smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Can you? Because you look like you're about to cry, and we're on national television. Eric's eyes were glassy, his breathing shallow. Sweat had soaked through his shirt collar. He looked like a man drowning in front of the world. Let me read you something, Crockett said, pulling out a printed email. This is from a former Trump Organization employee, anonymous because they are afraid of retaliation. They said, and I quote, Eric walks around like he built the company, but he inherited a brand and drove it into legal jeopardy. He's not a builder. He's a liability with a trust fund. I don't. Eric's voice cracked. Actually cracked. You can't just read anonymous. I can read whatever I want. This is congressional testimony, and I'm testifying to what your own employees think of you. Crockett set the paper down. They called you a liability, not an asset. A liability, the thing you're supposed to minimize, not promote to executive vice president. Eric put his face in his hands, just for a second, but the cameras caught it. All of them, in 4K from every angle. Mr. Trump, look at me. He looked up. His eyes were red. I want you to understand something, Crockett said, her voice softer now, but no less cutting. This isn't personal. I don't hate you. I don't know you, but I represent people who work 3 jobs and still can't afford health care. People who did everything right and still lost their homes in 2008 while your father called it an opportunity. People who believed your fake university would change their lives and ended up in debt instead. She leaned forward. You want to know why this is hard for you? Why you're sitting there looking like your dog died? Because for the first time in your life, someone with power is asking you to be accountable. Not your father, not your lawyers, not your accountants who make the numbers work. Me, a black woman from Texas who grew up with nothing you were handed. And it's killing you. This is a political witch hunt. Eric tried, voice breaking. No, sir. This is consequences. And you've never met those before. The room was absolutely silent. You could hear the air conditioning humming. Every question I've asked today, you've deflected, denied, or taken the fifth. You haven't given one straight answer. Not one. Because you can't. Because the truth, the actual no-bullshit truth, is that you're exactly what that email said. A liability with a trust fund, a name without substance, a suit without a spine. A tear rolled down Eric's cheek. Just one, but it was there, visible, captured forever. And the saddest part, Crockett said, you believe your own hype. You actually think you're a businessman, that you earned this, that you're qualified. But you're not. You're a placeholder. Your father gave you a title because you're his son, not because you deserved it. And deep down, in that part of your brain you don't like to visit late at night, you know it. You know you're a fraud. I'm not, Eric whispered. You are. And today, America saw it. Crockett gathered her papers, stacked them neatly. This is what accountability looks like, she said to the camera. Uncomfortable, necessary, real. Comment justice if you believe no one is above the law. The hearing concluded 15 minutes later. Eric Trump stumbled out to the committee room, flanked by lawyers, refusing to answer reporters' questions. His face was blotchy, his eyes red, his expensive suit wrinkled and sweat-stained. The footage went viral within minutes. Not just viral, thermonuclear viral. Within an hour, #Eric Trump crying was trending #1 on Twitter. News networks played the clip on loop. Late-night shows had a field day. The Daily Show opened with it. Stephen Colbert did a 15-minute segment. Even Saturday Night Live did an emergency web-only sketch. Fox News tried to defend him. It was a hostile hearing, they claimed. Grandstanding political theater. But you can't spin a man crying on camera while under oath. You can't defend pleading the fifth 500 times. You can't explain away fraud settlements and failed businesses and charity scams. Within 48 hours, the dominoes started falling, and they fell hard. The New York Attorney General, who'd been sitting on additional charges waiting for the right moment, filed the expanded civil fraud case, not just against the Trump Organization, against Eric personally. The hearing testimony became Exhibit A. His own words, his own evasions, his own Fifth Amendment invocations, all entered into the official record. His lawyers scrambled, but you can't unring that bell. The Republican National Committee distanced themselves. Not quietly this time, publicly. A spokesperson went on record. The INC supports candidates who embody integrity and accountability. The implication was deafening. Fundraising invitations didn't just get lost, they got rescinded. Eric was uninvited from 3 major donor events in the same week. At a PAC conference 2 months later, his name wasn't mentioned once. Not once. He'd been erased. The Trump Organization stock, they'd gone public in a SPAC deal that financial analysts called catastrophically stupid, didn't just drop. It collapsed. 23% in 2 days, 40% by the end of the week. Trading was halted twice for volatility. By month's end, the company had lost $2.3 billion in market value. Billion with a B. Partners pulled out of deals so fast they left skid marks. A Dubai development, cancelled. A Scottish golf course expansion, dead. A licensing deal in Indonesia worth $400 million. The Indonesian developers released a statement citing reputational concerns and walked away. The Trump name, once worth millions in licensing fees, became radioactive. Banks made their moves next. Deutsche Bank, which had loaned the Trump Organization over $300 million, called in their loans. All of them. 30-day notice. The family scrambled to refinance, but no major bank would touch them. They ended up with a high-interest private equity firm that charged rates you'd expect for a subprime car loan. The terms leaked to the Wall Street Journal, 12% interest. The Trump Organization was paying loan shark rates. 3 golf courses faced foreclosure proceedings within a month. Trump National Westchester, the same course that had hosted Eric's charity scam tournament, filed for bankruptcy protection. The irony was lost on no one. The property was eventually sold to a real estate consortium that immediately removed every Trump sign, every gold-plated fixture, every tacky monument to ego. They renamed it Westchester National. The Trump name literally scraped off and thrown in a dumpster. Eric disappeared from public view. 6 weeks without a single appearance, no interviews, no social media. His Twitter account went dormant. His Instagram, which had been a steady stream of working hard selfies and golf course glamour shots, went dark. People started making jokes. #EricOK became a meme. Someone created a parody account. Day 23 of Eric Trump's disappearance. Some say is living in the Mar-a-Lago basement, subsisting on well-done steak and Diet Coke. His father raged on Truth Social. "Witch hunt!" He screamed into the void. Radical Democrats. They are destroying a beautiful company. Eric did nothing wrong. But even mega loyalists were tired of the excuses. The comment sections on his posts, usually a haven of uncritical worship, started showing cracks. Maybe he should have just answered the questions, one user wrote. Another, took the fifth 500 times? That's not a witch hunt. That's guilt. The conservative commentariat turned on him too. Not on Donald. They'd never fully turn on Donald, but on Eric. Fair game. Here's the weak link, they said. Should have been stronger. Should have fought back. They were eating their own, and it was beautiful to watch. But the real consequences, the ones that mattered, played out in courtrooms and boardrooms across the country. The Manhattan District Attorney convened a grand jury. Eric's testimony gave them enough for a criminal referral. Within 3 months, he was indicted on 6 counts of financial fraud. Not civil charges this time. Criminal. Prison time on the table. His lawyers immediately moved to dismiss, claiming congressional testimony couldn't be used in criminal proceedings. The judge disagreed. The defendant provided this testimony voluntarily while under oath. The ruling stated, "It is admissible." The civil suits multiplied like rabbits. Former Trump University students who'd settled for pennies on the dollar filed motions to reopen their cases. We were defrauded into settling, their lawyers argued, pointing to Eric's hearing testimony as new evidence of systematic fraud. 3 judges agreed. The settlements were vacated. The cases reopened. Discovery began again. And this time, Eric couldn't hide behind the Fifth Amendment. He'd already testified under oath. Shea Simpson from Ohio. She became the lead plaintiff in a class-action lawsuit representing 7,000 former Trump University victims. Her lawyer appeared on MSNBC. Mr. Trump sat in front of Congress and admitted, through his inability to answer basic questions, that this was a fraud. Our clients deserve justice. And now, thanks to Congresswoman Crockett, we have the evidence to get it. The lawsuit sought $800 million in damages. The Trump Organization's insurance companies took one look at the hearing footage and settled immediately. They weren't going to trial with that video as evidence. The settlement terms were confidential, but anonymous sources told the press it was in the high 9 figures. Shea Simpson got a check for $47,000, her original $35,000 tuition, plus interest and damages. She framed it, hung it in her real estate office next to a photo of Crockett from the hearing, mid-question, glasses on, papers in hand, looking like the hand of justice itself. The St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, tired of being associated with the Eric Trump Foundation scandal, sued for reputational damages. Their lawyers argued that the foundation fraud had materially harmed St. Jude's fundraising efforts and tarnished their brand by association. They won. The judgment was $23 million. The Trump Organization paid it in monthly installments because they couldn't afford a lump sum. The hospital used the money to build a new research wing. They named it after a young cancer survivor from Memphis. No gold plaque with Trump's name, just a simple dedication to kids who actually needed help. Democratic fundraising went supernova. Act Blue crashed twice from the traffic surge. Small dollar donations flooded in $5, $10, $20 at a time, from teachers and nurses and retail workers who'd watched Eric Trump cry on TV and thought, finally, someone made them face it. Crockett's campaign war chest tripled in a week, hit $8 million in a month. She could have run for Senate, for governor, for anything. The Democratic Party was calling her office daily with opportunities. But the most satisfying moment, the one that made every Democrat who'd watched the hearing punch the air in triumph, came 3 months later. Eric Trump was forced to liquidate his personal assets to cover legal fees and settlement costs. The Park Avenue apartment, sold to a Democratic donor, no less, who immediately remodeled it and hosted a fundraiser for Planned Parenthood in what used to be Eric's living room. The private jet share, canceled. The watch collection worth $400,000, auctioned. A bidder bought the whole lot and donated it to a charity auction benefiting immigrant rights organizations. The watches that Eric had worn while building walls were now funding the people who needed them torn down. His wine collection, 2,000 bottles of rare vintages that he bragged about in magazine profiles, was seized by creditors and sold at auction. The top lot, a 1947 Chateau de Cam worth $30,000, was bought by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez campaign manager. He posted a photo on Twitter, drinking wine that used to belong to a guy who cried when asked basic questions about fraud. Tastes like justice. The yacht, a 125-foot monstrosity Eric had named Lady Luck, was repossessed by the bank and sold to a tech billionaire who renamed it Karma and hired an all-female crew of former Coast Guard officers. When asked why, the owner said, because Eric Trump should know that women are better at literally everything, including driving his boat. But beyond the schadenfreude, beyond the memes and the late-night jokes and the social media pile-on, something real happened. Jasmine Crockett became a household name, not as a bomb thrower or Twitter warrior or talking head, but as someone who did the work, who read the documents, who asked the questions no one else had the guts to ask, who held power accountable when accountability had become a quaint memory. She was invited to speak at the Democratic National Convention. Standing ovation before she said a word. When she walked to the podium, the entire arena chanted her name. Not USA. Not for more years. Just Crockett, Crockett, Crockett. Her speech was 8 minutes long. She didn't mention Eric Trump by name once. Didn't need to. Everyone knew what she'd done. We were told that some people are too big to fail, she said. Too powerful to question, too rich to prosecute. We were told to accept that there's one set of rules for us and another set for them. We were told that justice is blind, but we could all see it had been blindfolded by dollar bills. The crowd roared. But here's what I learned, Crockett continued. Justice isn't dead. It was just waiting for us to wake it up, waiting for us to demand it, waiting for us to stop accepting that's just how it is and start insisting that's not how it should be. Another rule. They thought they could lie forever, cheat forever, steal forever, and face nothing but fines they could afford and settlements they could hide. They thought wrong. The applause was deafening. When she finished, Barack Obama, who was in attendance, tweeted, "This is what courage looks like. This is what democracy requires. More Crockett's, please." The video got 45 million views in 24 hours. Back in Texas, in her district, a mural went up on the side of a building. Jasmine Crockett, larger than life, holding the gavel in one hand and the Constitution in the other. Underneath, in letters 6 feet tall, receipts over privilege. Tourists took photos in front of it. School groups visited. A teacher from a local high school brought her civics class and told them, "This is what it looks like when someone fights for you. Remember this, because the world needs more people willing to ask the hard questions." One student asked, "Did she really make him cry?" The teacher pulled up the video on her phone. They watched it together, all 37 students crowded around. And when the tear rolled down Eric Trump's face, when he crumbled under the weight of his own lies, those kids erupted in applause. Not because they were cruel, but because they understood what it meant. That no one is above accountability. That privilege isn't invincibility. That sometimes, if you ask the right questions and demand real answers, you can make the powerful face what they've done. And sometimes, just sometimes, you can make them cry. Back in Ohio, Shea Simpson hung that photo of Crockett in her office, right next to her framed settlement check, right next to her real estate license that she'd earned the hard way, night classes, weekend studying, no shortcuts, no scams, just work. Clients would come in and ask about it. "Who's that?" they'd say, pointing at Crockett. And Shea would smile and say, "That's a woman who proved that the truth still matters, that lies have consequences, that justice might be slow, but it's not dead." Then she'd tell them the whole story, about the fake university, about the hearing, about the 47 minutes that changed everything. And every single client, without fail, would get this look on their face, this mixture of satisfaction and hope and righteous vindication. "Good," they'd say. "He deserved it." And Shea would nod and think, yes, he did. Justice isn't always swift, but when it comes, when it really comes, it's beautiful. Congressional oversight hearings don't usually change anything. They are mostly political theater, sound bites of campaign ads, opportunities for grandstanding, moments for representatives to look tough for their constituents. But every once in a while, something breaks through. Eric Trump's testimony and his very public humiliation became a watershed moment, not because it revealed anything new. We already knew about the fraud, the scams, the nepotism, the failures. The New York Times had documented it all. The Attorney General had prosecuted it. The facts were public record. But facts without accountability are just trivia. What Crockett did that day was force accountability into a system designed to avoid it. She didn't let him deflect, didn't accept his excuses, didn't buy his performance of competence. She asked simple questions and demanded honest answers. And when he couldn't provide them, she made sure everyone saw exactly why. That's not complicated. It's not even particularly clever. It's just rare. Because most of the time, people like Eric Trump skate through life protected by money, lawyers, and the benefit of the doubt that comes with being born into the right family. They fail up. They screw up and settle. They leave victims in their wake and call it business. And they never, ever face real consequences. Until they do. The hearing lasted 3 hours and 47 minutes. But the moment that mattered, the moment that broke through the noise and actually meant something, lasted exactly 47 minutes. 47 minutes of questions Eric Trump couldn't answer. 47 minutes of documents he couldn't explain. 47 minutes of truth he couldn't deny. 47 minutes that ended with tears on national television. They say sunlight is the best disinfectant. That day, Jasmine Crockett brought a floodlight to a roach motel, and we all watched the roaches scatter. Sometimes justice doesn't rule. Sometimes it just asks questions you can't answer. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's enough.